Cylinders, where would we be without them? We'd be walking. We can really divide your engine into two halves roughly. The top end from the cylinder base up, and the bottom end, which is from the same point the cylinder base down. So we've got crankshaft connecting rods down there, but we've got plenty of action up here as well. I have to add, we also have a gearbox in there. We have plenty of action up here though. We've got cylinders, pistons, cylinder head, valves, camshafts, cam sprockets, cam chains, carburetors, exhausts. There's a bucket load of stuff up there. Out of all of the things though on your engine, the one that will wear out is probably going to be your cylinder. The bottom end of these things are quite robust, and if you keep your oil changes up, there won't be a great deal of wear and tear on them for many, many kilometres. Also, if you're not so good with maintaining your bike, it's actually something that I've noticed with the CB particularly, but most bikes. It's the piston and the cylinder that wears out if you're not meticulous with your oil changes. So this video that we're going to do, well, it's probably going to be a series of videos just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to cope with. I'll probably chop it up into bits rather than make it a 6-hour Ben-Hur marathon, or you know, making it like sitting down and watching the original version of the stand in one go. At the moment our test bike is running a not so top secret 220 something cc cylinder, a 28mm carburetor, a Type 1 head and a standard Honda camshaft. And this is an amazing bit of gear. It really goes quite well. It's torquey. It carts my fat backside around easily at 80 or 90, and it goes a lot further than that. But we are actually a transport company as well as many other things here, and we do a little bit of motorcycle courier work, and that's where the CBs come really into their own. And what we're going to do here is reconfigure this bike so that it can be used as an economical motorcycle couriering machine. I don't know if that's a word. We will basically change it to this, which is a 185. This is a little bit different to the 185 big bore kit that we've been known to sell, and that bounces around. This is actually designed for the total conversion series that I'm such a fan of, where you change the crankshaft instead of just the cylinder and the piston and the head. The reason why we change the crankshaft is to make use of a larger diameter piston pin, and there are a variety of cylinders available for this, what I call total conversion, that starts at 150 and works its way up to the 230 mark. So this is 220 something. I forget exactly what this guy is. It makes about 16, 17, possibly 18 horsepower compared to the standard CB125E's somewhat lackluster 6 horsepower. The idea here is to make it a little bit more economical, but still have just a little bit more than the standard torque. Now I have to say that in standard form the CB125E does perform well as a courier. It's not quite as good with the heavier riders, of course, but around the city where it counts, when you're delivering things like mail and small packages, great stuff. Okay, so I suppose we should start with the basics. remove your seat, tank and your side covers, and your top box if you've got one. Okay, so that's our seat, tank and side covers removed. Now if you're not familiar with this channel, there's actually a video on that. Just have a little bit of a poke around and you'll find it there. Early in the piece I decided to make a video on removing the seat, tank and side covers rather than bore everybody with showing it time and time again. Most of you who maintain your vehicle are quite good at removing your own seat, tank and side covers without instructions anyway. True? Now, this is looking at our top end. And this is our cylinder, which is going to go in here, and you can see the side of the cylinder that's already on there is basically that one there. So she's sort of sitting in there like that. There's a few tasks that you might need to perform. Somebody was talking to me briefly about head gaskets. Well, that sits just above the cylinder there. That's your head gasket face there. So this video can be used for instructions for just about any task between here and here. I am going to show you how to do the cam timing, but I'm not going to be incredibly detailed with it, because as well with cam timing we do have videos on that subject. It's actually quite well covered. So as an overview, we're going to remove the rocker cover. Underneath there is a camshaft cam carrier. We're going to unbolt the camshaft sprocket so that we can drop the cam chain, not too far though. And from there we'll take the head off and then the cylinder. Now on this journey, the very first things we're going to do, of course, we're going to remove the exhaust and the camshaft and the carburetor. Now, at the moment this bike's running an Excel exhaust pipe, and they're not a bad pipe. It's a shame they stopped making them, and I'm not even sure why they stopped making them, because they were selling bucket loads of the things. The Excel pipe is held on just with the back exhaust mount there under my finger, and reaching all the way across the two bolts there on the exhaust manifold. A standard pipe, which you might have, also has another bolt under here. So it's actually around about where my, let's see if I can find it. There we go. So it's where my hand is, and it's generally accessed from the other side. Okay, and it's a 12mm, I think, from memory. For those of you wondering, I cut my arm. That's why I have a nice oily rag, which is very clean and hygienic, to stop the bleeding. Anyway, we'll start by taking this pipe off. Now when I tackle any work like this particular job here on a CB or a metric bike, automatically I pick up my 10, 12, 14 and 17mm spanners, because that will cover 90% of the bike just about. I haven't decided if I'm going to put the standard pipe back on. I'm not actually a great fan of performance pipes. On smaller bikes I see an advantage to them in that smaller bikes tend to be quieter, and if people don't see you, really it's better that they have an opportunity to hear you. I don't feel that the Excel ever made a major contribution to power until the bikes, until the big bores developed to the point where the standard pipe just couldn't flow the exhaust gases out fast enough. So while I was waffling on there, you've got your two 12mm here at the exhaust manifold. I've taken those off. And you saw me loosen the back bracket off. And out she comes. Putting stuff back onto where they're mounted. And pull the spark plug lead while we're on this side. In fact, what we should do is at this point remove the carburetor. Okay, so currently our bike is running a foam filter, so we'll just loosen that off. And we've got our two manifold cap head screws, one there and one there. Now you can also see just there at the back there's a little pipe that goes to the manifold, so we may as well unplug that. And crack those bolts. All going very swimmingly, so we will remove the throttle cable, which is attached to this slide. Because I'm not much of a bleeder, I should be able to take that rag off in a minute. There we go. You can tell that that little gem has been around, and it has. It's one of my personal favourites, this type of carburetor, and starting to hear back from people who bought total conversions and saying that they've tried a few different combinations, and the McCuney round slide and the 28mm seems to be the favourite. Okay, so that's that. Now, one thing you should keep an eye out for is this O-ring. Goes inside your manifold like so. Don't lose that, because if you do, it's going to give you problems. They're cheap enough to buy though. Honda have them for about $6, but supplies of things like that from overseas are a bit dodgy at the moment. So I wouldn't put yourself in a position where you are waiting on such a simple part. Now we may as well attend to this as well while we're at it. Now I'm going to store this carburetor, and the wisest thing I can do with it is to open that little drain screw down the bottom there and let all the petrol out of it. Now you may have noticed that cable is different. The standard cable doesn't work well with slide carburetors. It has a big chunky sort of a knob on the end of it, whereas this has got a little knob on there so that you can pop it into the grooves and slot in the slide. So if you do decide to go to this kind of carburetor, what you will need to do, of course, is to find yourself another throttle cable. Okay, so two other tasks that I'm going to do that I'm going to put on the back of this video is to change the throttle cable back to the standard one, and to put the standard air pipe back on. That will eventually go to the carburetor from the airbox. I'm going to tack these little gems on to the back of this video without a great deal of comment. The reason for that is that the vast majority of you probably are just replacing the standard cylinder on the standard bike, and although taking off the one carburetor is very similar to taking off another, you definitely won't be putting in air pipes or changing throttle cables. If you do have a standard carburetor, what you can actually do is just cheat and take off the inlet, loosen the two cap head screws on the inlet manifold, take them right out of the picture, and then just forget about them. Leave the carburetor sitting there. You might need to hang it up with a bit of string, but I've actually found they sit there generally quite well. So you can actually just leave your carby there. and not worry about it. What this is about, by the way, if you can see that, our little knob just goes into the hand grip and basically just like that. But it has to be on the handlebar when it's done. Things just aren't long enough. And of course on there you've got to put the switch block back together. Locating pin. You just need to make nice. And finish bleeding. Straight into the bin, of course, with contaminated rags. That's our throttle cable changed. Okay, so our air pipe looks like that, and there's actually a little locating tab somewhere, I believe. That looks like it's up this, doesn't it? And there it is. Yep. And just stuff that back into the airbox where it belongs. Make sure that the lip goes on properly. And that just doesn't look right, does it? Well, apparently it is. But, locating doohickey lines up well. So probably just go there. Perfect. Perfect enough. As you can see, it rotates easily, so when we put the carburetor back in there, we'll be able to correctly orientate it. This little gem, it's actually our choke cable. There we go. Alright. So, this is basically the bike now at a point where somebody with a standard engine would have a carburetor hanging there. Possibly would have removed it. You know, the real shame is that in the instance of the carburetor and the exhaust, this video doesn't really apply to a standard engine. But you can use a bit of common sense when removing the exhaust. And there's definitely a video on removing the carburetor that you can have a look at with a standard carburetor as far as that's concerned. So you're not completely at a loss. You know, there are videos that can sort of fill in the blanks. And that's why I've decided to stop this video right here, because we've had to deal with non-standard items. The next video will sort of progress in a direction that applies to modified engines as well as standard ones, because the removal of a big bore kit or a standard bore is basically the same, only different. You know, one is bigger, the circlets might be slightly different on the piston pin, but that's about it. Okay, so next video we'll start pulling the top off it.